3 years ago, I told my best friend he was an idiot for renting. I had the spreadsheet, I had the talking points, I had the smug homeowner energy. Then I ran the actual math, all of it, and I had to call him and apologize. I'm Tony. This video is that math. Here is the problem with every rent versus buy debate you have ever watched. The homeownership side leads with the ending. They show you what a house is worth in 20 years and call it proof. The renting side leads with flexibility and freedom and pretends that has no long-term cost. Neither side runs the full math. Neither side includes everything. This video includes everything. The mortgage interest that gets buried in year one. The closing costs nobody mentions until you are sitting at the table. The property taxes that grow as your home appreciates. The maintenance budget that never appears on a real estate influencer's thumbnail. And the number that almost never gets calculated honestly. What actually happens if the renter invests the money they are not spending on a mortgage every month for 20 years? But there is one more thing almost nobody talks about. What actually happens to human behavior when there is no automatic mechanism forcing you to save? Because that one variable changes the outcome more than interest rates, more than appreciation, more than any number in a spreadsheet. By the end of this, you will know the actual break-even point on buying versus renting in a realistic market. Why the phrase throwing money away on rent is more misleading than it is math. And exactly which situation makes buying the clear winner versus renting the smarter play. And you will have an honest answer to the question that changes everything. Not just which strategy wins on paper, but which one you will actually execute. Before we get into the numbers, if this kind of complete honest breakdown is what you have been looking for, subscribe right now. This channel runs the real math on financial decisions. Not the version that sounds good on a thumbnail. The version that holds up in a spreadsheet. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss one. Jake and Marcus are both 32 years old. They both earn $80,000 a year. They both have $70,000 saved. They are renting in the same mid-sized city. A comfortable 3-bedroom home in a decent neighborhood is listed at $350,000. These two guys represent every version of this decision I have watched play out, including one I almost made myself. Jake buys. He puts the full $70, zero down, exactly 20%, which lets him avoid private mortgage insurance. He takes a 30-year loan at a 7% interest rate. His principal and interest payment comes to $1,863 per month. He adds property taxes of $350 per month, homeowners insurance at $150 per month, and sets aside $290 per month for maintenance. Roughly 1% of the home's value annually, the minimum any honest financial planner will tell you to budget. Jake's total monthly cost to own this home is $2,653. Marcus calls his landlord and signs another lease. He rents a comparable 3-bedroom in the same area for $2,000 per month. He takes the $70,000 he did not spend on a down payment and puts it into a total stock market index fund. He also invests the $653 per month difference between what Jake pays and what he pays. On paper, Marcus looks like he found a loophole. He is living in a nearly identical home for $653 less per month, and his capital is still in the market. Now here is the thing almost nobody says out loud in this debate. The moment Jake signs at closing, he is not ahead, he is behind, and not by a little. Closing costs on a $350,000 home run between 2 and 5% of the purchase price. Lender fees, title insurance, attorney fees, prepaid taxes, escrow setup. Jake paid $70,000 to get into this home, but his real day one cost is close to $82,000 to $88,000. That gap needs to be recovered before buying starts to make more financial sense than renting. The real estate industry does not advertise this number because it makes year one look bad, but it is real. It is standard, and it comes due at the closing table. Here is the first place I have watched people make a critical mistake. They fall in love with the house before they ever do this math. And once you are emotionally attached, these numbers stop looking like facts and start looking like obstacles. That is where the decision starts going sideways. Not at the closing table, but the moment you walk through the front door and picture your furniture in the living room. This is also where the rent versus buy debate almost always goes wrong. The homeownership side talks about equity from day one. What they do not mention is that in year one of a 30-year mortgage at 7%, the vast majority of your payment is interest, not equity. Of that $1,863 monthly payment, roughly $1,603 goes to the lender as interest in month one. Only $230 goes toward reducing the loan balance. Jake is paying $1,603 in interest, $350 in taxes, $150 in insurance, and $290 in maintenance. That is $2,623 per month going out the door with no equity attached. The $230 in principal paydown is the only part of his monthly payment doing what people imagine the whole payment is doing. The phrase throwing money away on rent survives because it sounds true. But in year one, Jake is throwing away $2,623 per month on costs that build no equity. Marcus is throwing away $2,000 per month on rent. Marcus is throwing away less. And here is something the spreadsheet cannot show you. Year one is also the year data shows most renters who plan to invest the difference stop investing the difference. The market dips. Life happens. A trip comes up. The gap between what they plan to do and what they actually do opens up right here. In year one, not in year 10. Now let's run the actual numbers through year 3 because this is where the fantasy starts meeting the spreadsheet. Over 3 years, Jake has paid approximately $95,500 in total housing costs, principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and maintenance combined. Of that, roughly $8,300 has gone toward actual principal paydown. His remaining mortgage balance is approximately $271,700. If the home has appreciated at 3 to 4% annually, it is now worth between $383,000 and $356,000. His equity sits somewhere between the $111,000 and $124,000. That is real wealth. It is also locked inside the walls of a house he cannot sell without paying 5 to 6% in commissions on the way out. He replaced a water heater in year 2 for $300 and dealt with a wall crack that cost him a weekend and $400 in materials. Those came from the maintenance budget. He managed them, but they will keep coming. Over the same 3 years, Marcus has paid $72,000 in rent. His $70,000 index fund investment has grown to approximately $93,000 at historical market returns. His $653 monthly contributions have added another $27,000 in portfolio value. Marcus's total invested wealth is approximately $120,000. At year 3, Marcus is slightly ahead in liquid net worth. Jake has more equity on paper. But Jake cannot spend equity without selling the house or taking on new debt. Marcus can access his portfolio any business day, but here is the number that almost never makes it into this comparison. Studies on household savings behavior show that fewer than 3 in 10 renters who intend to invest the difference actually do so consistently across a 3-year period. If Marcus is one of the 7, not the 3, his $27, zero in contributions becomes closer to $8,000 or $12,000. And the whole comparison changes. This is not a knock on renters. It is a fact about human behavior under financial pressure. And it is the variable that every rent versus buy spreadsheet quietly ignores. If this breakdown is already showing you the parts of this debate that usually get skipped, go ahead and hit like right now. It takes 1 second and it helps more people find this content. Now let's talk about the costs that almost never make it into the buying analysis. When Jake eventually sells this house, he will pay a seller's commission, typically 5 to 6% of the sale price. On a $500,000 home, that is $25,000 to $30,000 leaving his pocket at the closing table. Combined with the costs he paid going in, his total transaction drag over a full buy and sell cycle is often 8 to 10% of the home's value. That is the hurdle appreciation has to clear before the investment actually performs. Property taxes grow with assessed value. Jake's $350 per month is based on a $350,000 home. If that home appreciates to $500,000 in 15 years, his taxes will follow. In many markets, that means his total housing cost rises over time even though his mortgage payment stays fixed. Marcus's rent will also increase, but his landlord absorbs the property tax exposure. Not him. Maintenance is not optional, and it is not always $290 per month. Budget years look like $200 in caulk and light bulbs. Reality years look like $9. Susan roofs, $7,500 HVAC systems, and $4,000 foundation repairs. These costs are guaranteed over a long enough timeline. A homeowner who does not set aside for them is not saving money. They are borrowing time against a bill with a due date that never gets announced. And then there is the number that almost never appears in homeownership calculations: opportunity cost. Jake's $70, zero down payment is gone from the market the moment he wires it to closing. At a 10% average annual return over 20 years, that $70,000 would have grown to approximately $470,000 in a total market index fund. That is not money Jake lost. It is the alternative outcome he traded for home equity. The comparison is only honest if you count both sides. By year 10, Jake's home is worth approximately $483,000 to $500,000 at 3 to 4% annual appreciation. His remaining mortgage balance after 10 years of payments is approximately $246,000. His equity sits between $237,000 and $254,000. He has spent roughly $30,000 to $4,000 on maintenance, repairs, and small upgrades over the decade. Total money out of pocket, down payment, closing costs, and everything above principal is somewhere between $160,000 and $185,000. Marcus has been investing since day one. His original $70,000 has grown to approximately $181,000. His monthly contributions averaged roughly $580 per month, because as his rent increased at 3% annually, the gap between his costs and Jake's costs narrowed. His contribution-based portfolio growth adds approximately $110,000. Marcus's total liquid portfolio at year 10 is approximately $291,000. On liquid net worth, Marcus is still ahead. Jake's equity of roughly $245,000 trails Marcus's $291,000 in invested assets. But something important has shifted. Marcus's rent by year 10 has climbed to approximately $2,690 per month. He is now paying nearly as much as Jake every month, with nothing building underneath it, and Jake's mortgage payment is fixed for 20 more years. Marcus's rent will keep climbing. Here is what the spreadsheet still cannot show you. By year 10, the renter who actually invested, the disciplined 30%, has done well. But the renter who spent the difference has roughly $40, zero in a savings account, and nothing in the market. And they still have 20 more years of rising rent ahead of them with nothing building underneath. This is the year I started understanding why my friend, the one I called irresponsible, was actually playing a longer game than I gave him credit for, and also why most people in his position never make it to this point with their strategy still intact. By year 20, Jake's home is worth approximately $670,000 to $700,000. His mortgage balance has dropped to around $188,000. His equity is approximately $482,000 to $512,000. He has spent somewhere between $55,000 and $75,000 total on maintenance over the 2 decades. His monthly housing cost has stayed relatively anchored to that original $1.863 payment, even as everything around him has gotten more expensive. Marcus's portfolio at year 20 is approximately $500,000 to $580, 0, but only if he held through every market correction without selling and kept contributing even as his rent absorbed more of his income. His rent by year 20 has climbed to roughly $3,600 per month. In the later years of this comparison, his monthly investment contributions have shrunk because the cost advantage he started with is nearly gone. Marcus is slightly ahead on total net worth, but that is the best case version of Marcus. The version who invested every single dollar, held through every crash, and never touched it. Before we get to year 30, let's be equally honest about what buying gets wrong. Because the people who skip this part are the ones selling you the rosy version. The break-even timeline is longer than most buyers expect. When you factor in closing costs going in, selling costs going out, and the interest-heavy early years of the mortgage, buying a home typically does not start outperforming renting and investing until year 5 to 7 in a normal market. Buy a house and sell it in 3 years, and there is a very real chance you lost money compared to renting. Mobility has a price, and homeownership makes mobility expensive. If a job opportunity in another city could have added $20,000 a year to your income, the cost of being locked into a house is not just financial. It is the career you did not take. Concentration risk is real and underappreciated. A homeowner in Detroit in 2006, Las Vegas in 2008, or any number of regional markets that have stagnated or declined knows what it feels like when your largest asset drops 30% and you cannot simply rebalance. Marcus is diversified across thousands of companies in dozens of sectors. Jake's entire net worth is concentrated in one building, on one street, in one zip code, and liquidity matters more than people realize until they need it. Jake cannot sell 5% of his house to cover a medical emergency. He cannot tap his equity without taking on more debt at a new interest rate. Home equity is wealth you cannot easily access, and the process of accessing it always costs money. If you are finding this more useful than the version that simply tells you to buy or simply tells you to rent, hit like right now. It genuinely helps this content reach more people, and subscribe if you have not already. Now, year 30. Jake's mortgage is paid off. His home is worth approximately $850,000 to $950,000, and his monthly cost to live there, property taxes, insurance, and maintenance, is roughly $900 to $100 per month. Marcus is still renting. His rent by year 30 has climbed to $4,700 to $5,000 per month. No asset underneath him, no finish line, no floor under his cost of living. Jake's monthly housing cost at year 30 dropped by more than half. Marcus's has been climbing for 30 years, and it never stops. Here is the part that hits hardest. The renting and investing strategy works. It genuinely works, but only for the version of Marcus who invested every single month for 30 years. The version who skipped contributions in year 4, spent the difference in year 7, and scaled back in year 14. At year 30, he has about $180,000 in savings and a $4,800 rent bill. The math is not wrong, the human is. This is what behavioral economists call the behavior gap, the distance between what we intend to do with money and what we actually do. And nowhere is that gap wider than in long-term investment discipline. The Federal Reserve's survey of consumer finances consistently shows that the median net worth of homeowners in America is roughly 40 times that of renters. 40 times. That is not because a house is always a better investment than an index fund. It is because a mortgage is a commitment device. It forces the savings automatically, every single month, even on the months when you would have spent it. Even on the months when the market is down 30% and every instinct you have says, wait it out in cash. The mortgage does the investing for you, quietly, whether you feel like it or not. 3 years ago, I called my friend an idiot. What I did not understand then, what the spreadsheet could not show me, is that he was one of the rare 30% who actually had the discipline. He invested the difference every month. He held through the drops. He never touched it. Most of us are not wired that way, and the version of this math that matters is not which strategy wins theoretically. It is which strategy you will actually execute for 30 years. For most people, not all, but most, the mortgage does that automatically. That is the apology I owed him. So here is the honest answer, and it is not the same answer for everyone. Buying wins is clearly if you are planning to stay in one place for at least 7 to 10 years. If your local price-to-rent ratio, the home price divided by the annual rent for a comparable property, is below 20, buying tends to pencil out in your favor. If your rent is already close to what a total mortgage payment would cost, the financial argument for renting weakens every single year. If your market consistently appreciates above the national average, leverage through a mortgage accelerates wealth faster than an equivalent portfolio position can match. And if you know yourself well enough to know you are not in the disciplined 30%, buying enforces the savings you would not make voluntarily. Renting wins clearly if you might move in the next 3 to 5 years. If your local price-to-rent ratio is above 25, renting and consistently investing the difference will often outperform buying even over long time horizons. If you are in a career phase where mobility creates meaningful income growth, the flexibility premium of renting has real economic value that does not appear on any spreadsheet. And if you can genuinely say, not plan, but honestly say, that you are one of the 30% who will invest every dollar of the cost gap every month through every market crash without touching it, then the math supports you. 2 questions that change everything. How long are you actually planning to stay? And be honest with yourself. Are you one of the 30%? And there is a third question that almost nobody asks. Is there a version of this where you do not have to choose? A duplex, a house hack, a property where your tenant's rent covers most of the mortgage while you keep investing? Because the math on that scenario, the one that combines both strategies, is a completely different conversation, and the numbers in that scenario change almost everything we looked at today. The math does not lie, but the math assumes you do what you said you would do, and that is where most of us, including me 3 years ago, fall short. If this video gave you a clearer picture, not just the equity part, not just the flexibility part, but all of it, including the part where human behavior changes the outcome more than interest rates do, please hit like before you go. It genuinely helps this content reach more people. Subscribe for weekly videos that break down financial decisions completely, honestly, with real math and no agenda. And drop a comment below. Team rent, team buy, or are you working on a third option? I read every single one. See you in the next one.